If you are joining us for the first time, hello and welcome. If you are a returning supporter and friend, welcome back. This is Unboxing Economics. Today we'll be taking a look at the arguments in favour, that is a yes vote, of the Aboriginal Voice to Parliament, a referendum to be held on the 14th of October 2023. We will be outlining the case in favour only in this video. A video outlining the arguments against will be in a separate video, and please note a full reading of the bill is available on this channel, pinned in the description below. I absolutely recommend you go and take a look. In the spirit of an academic debate, as the affirmative side has the burden of proof, we should probably talk a bit about what the voice actually is. If passed by the referendum, the voice would be an entity, institution, given power by the Constitution to be a self-governing body run by Aboriginal individuals, elected from Aboriginal individuals to advise the Parliament and executive government on matters pertaining to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. The body would have the power to give advice to the Parliament on matters it deems appropriate. The Parliament does not need to independently seek advice from the voice, nor would the Parliament be obligated to follow advice given to it by the voice. This would allow Aboriginal voices to be heard on grassroots issues based on community consultation in a manner and scope appropriate to and in concert with Aboriginal cultural norms and customs. Now to the yes case. Please note the following is an extensive but by no means exhaustive list. Number 1, recognition. For many years, Australian, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have sought constitutional recognition by a formal and permanent mention in the Constitution as this continent's first people. Whilst such a mention would not undo any historic injustice, it would be an initial gesture of good faith to recognise formally that pre-colonisation there were many flourishing nations which each had their own systems of government, language, culture, history, food, farming and art. They occupied this vast southern land. The land was part of them, and they were part of it. To own land legally is a very Western European idea. To have ownership of land morally, a connection to country, waterways, skies, mountains, ancestral ties, is a very Aboriginal idea, much of which was either destroyed, neglected, or otherwise negatively impacted by European settlement. A conversation in good faith cannot begin without recognition of these cultural differences and these historic facts. Next, reconciliation. The voice to Parliament would be a next step in a long and slow, cautious road Australia has taken towards reconciliation with its First Nations people. Starting in 1967 with a referendum changing the Constitution to allow Aboriginal Australians the right to vote, continuing in 1993 with native title legislation through the High Court, continuing in 2007 with an apology delivered by Prime Minister of the day, Mr. Kevin Rudd, on the opening of the day of the Parliament. This continued in 2017 with an acknowledgement and endorsement by the government of the day of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The voice in 2023 will be the next logical and significant step in this process. Next up is perhaps the most compelling and yet the least discussed argument in this whole debate, and that is that previous action on Aboriginal issues has not worked. Many previous Australian governments have thrown much money, institutional power, legislative effort and other resources at Aboriginal problems, with mixed to disappointing results. The voice will, at the very least, aim at being different and being concerned with the method of policy implementation and delivery, not merely the outcome or policy prescription. This will be achieved by use of Aboriginal understanding. The voice will be run by Aboriginals for Aboriginals, and thus there will be far less cultural friction in communicating concerns, with a shared understanding of the problems facing First Nations people. Moreover, policies as guided by the voice would likely have greater chance of success. ATSIC, for example, was set up by the government, administered by the government, with strict procedures and guidelines. For lack of a better phrase, this was a white government through a white lens, fixing black problems with white solutions, which simply didn't and hasn't worked. Next, the enshrinement in the Constitution. If passed, the Voice's presence in the body of the Constitution would not only be a matter of recognition, it would mean that no future government could merely be able to repeal the Voice. This gives the Voice, the organisation, and the wider Australian community confidence in its permanency and its ability to evolve over time, to change with growing and evolving needs of Aboriginal Australians, to grow in expertise and experience, and to be confident of future funding. This would help ensure that the Voice would not become another ATSIC, which due to corruption, mismanagement, inadequacy or otherwise was disbanded by the government of the day in 2005. Many prominent Aboriginal Australians are for the Voice, including Noel Pearson, plus an overwhelming majority of the 250 prominent Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members who wrote, publicised and were signatories to the Uluru Statement of the Heart. In the words of Dr. Shireen Morris, a Yes campaigner, a constitutional scholar and proud Aboriginal woman, I couldn't think who better to quote in closing and in summary of this debate. She said, "This referendum boils down to a moral question about who we are as a country and who we want to be in the future. Do Indigenous communities deserve to be recognised in the Constitution from which they were wrongly omitted in 1901? And do they deserve a guaranteed voice, not a veto, just an advisory, non-binding voice when Parliament and government make laws and policies about their communities? Will Yunupingu and his people finally get their wish? That's the question Australians have to answer." Please note, I understand there are plenty of rebuttals and responses to all of these arguments, which will be covered in a separate video, a summing up, rebuttal and conclusion of sorts. This has been Unboxing Economics. Thank you so much for watching.